and welcome to Good Games Spawn Point, the show for younger gamers by gamers. I am Darren.
And I'm Bajo. Darren, could you please turn down the lights a bit? They're hurting my eyes.
Cut the lights.
Oh, that's better. Now, Darren, when we discussed hosting the show together this week, we never discussed this throne monstrosity being here. I think it's going to make reviewing a little difficult.
Oh, well, you know me, Bajo. I can't resist the chance for lights, camera, and shimmering outfits.
Yes, well, as you may have noticed, Hex isn't here this week. She's over at the Electronic Entertainment Expo in America, and she'll be back next week. So it's just Darren and I today. Yes, that'll be interesting. Coming up on the show, Game Dev Tycoon. It's a game made right here in Australia.
Plus, we'll meet a spawnling who's an expert with the Raspberry Pi.
Oh, pie, yum!
Raspberry Pi is a small computer platform, Bajo. He makes games.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's news time, Darren. Would you like to do the honours this week?
Oh, I'd love to. Oh, I'll just go off and,
do you want a hand?
Yes, please.
Okay.
If you could help me move
hang on.
that way. No, the other way. This year's Electronic Entertainment Expo has revealed new games and new consoles on the way in time for Christmas. Microsoft confirmed that the new Xbox One console will release locally in November, bringing with it an upgraded Kinect sensor that comes as standard and a controller with vibrating triggers. One of the new Xbox One games will be an enhanced version of Minecraft with bigger maps. Sony followed up by unveiling the PlayStation 4 hardware, also set for release by Christmas. The new DualShock controller has a touchpad, and unlike the Xbox One, the PS4 will not require an internet connection or restrict the use of second-hand games. But now, just like with Xbox Live, you will now have to pay for an online subscription fee if you wish to play PS4 games online. And finally, Nintendo showed off an impressive lineup of new game announcements via their special Nintendo Direct E3 video. I can't wait to hear what Hex has to say about all this. And that's the news.
Oh, that thing is heavy. Okay, Darren, let's get to our first review.
Negative. Actually, I thought, seeing as Hex is over at E3 playing all the very latest games, that we could take the opportunity to look at what goes into making a game.
Once again, Darren, this is something you didn't discuss with me beforehand. We're just going into it.
The spawnlings are always writing in, asking us how to make games.
Well, that is true.
And there are so many ways to make games and so many skills to learn, it can seem overwhelming.
You know what, Darren? I actually think this is a very good idea. Let's do it.
Affirmative. Now, to make things a little easier, we're going to look at 3 of the tools you can use. As with game systems, there's no one tool or programming language that's the best. They all have strengths and weaknesses, and they all have their uses. To clarify, a programming language is a system for making computer programs where every action is spelled out exactly with special words and symbols. Some of your mumbots or dadbots may have dabbled with the language known as BASIC back when they were spawnlings.
Yes, but if you want to make big, sophisticated, proper games, you'll need to learn a proper language, such as C++ or Python. But you don't have to jump into the deep end with all that, because you can start with a basic game maker called Scratch.
Scratch lets you play around with programs as if they were made of building blocks. By dragging and dropping the coloured blocks on the left, you can make simple games with Scratch as mascot, Scratch the cat. Or you can paint or import art of your own.
Behold, Darren, for I have made a game in Scratch, both to demonstrate its ease of use, but also my supreme cleverness. Observe how when the game begins, the little robot is in the Darren cave. His objective? To reach French Perth.
For the last time, there's no such place as French Perth.
Well, A, Darren, that's a matter of opinion, and B, it doesn't have to be realistic because it's a game. Now, see how I've set up these little rules under scripts. When you press the up arrow, the robot goes up by 10 pixels. When you press the down arrow, he goes down by 10. Same for left and right. Both the robot and French Perth are game objects, and they're called sprites. I've set a rule for French Perth too. Being a city, it can't move, obviously. But when the robot arrives, the people are pleased to see him, and they say, "Oui, oui."
What kind of challenge does your game offer?
Now this is fun, Darren. See, I've created an obstacle between French Perth and the robot. A ghost monster. If you touch the ghost monster, you get sent right back to your cave. Oh no!
Did it take you long to make?
Not really, Darren, and that's because there are heaps of guides online, so if you get stuck, help is only a click away. And the latest version of Scratch also has content sharing built in, so you can try out games made by people from all over the world.
If you're an absolute beginner, it's a great place to start. I give Scratch 8 rubber chickens.
Yes, it can be a little glitchy, but I'm with you, Darren. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 as well.
Next, D.A.R.R.E.N. This tool is a little more in-depth because it deals with a proper programming language, Lua. Lua was created in Brazil and it's named after the Portuguese word for moon. The D.A.R.R.E.N software package serves as both an editor and interpreter. It has everything you need to get started. The package is geared towards creating 2D and 3D graphical effects. Put simply, D.A.R.R.E.N is designed for making games.
I like what they've done here, Darren. They've made D.A.R.R.E.N easy to use. Keywords are automatically color-coded as you type your program, so they're easier to read. My main issue with this is that you're typing out programs on a tablet, so you don't have the ease of use of a standard keyboard. You could use a wireless Bluetooth one, I assume, but even so, it's quite difficult selecting text and moving the cursor. Oh, I got a little bit frustrated, Darren.
Then there's the issue of concentration. When programming, a human, such as Bajo, really needs his brain switched on and focused. You need to be sitting at a desk, and for that, again, you may as well use a proper PC.
The package comes with some sample programs, which is great. You can look at the code and see how they work. Sort of like looking at test answers. There are some sample sprites, but I did find the graphics editor a bit fiddly. However, overall, for making games on the go, this is pretty amazing, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I found it a bit too frustrating. 6 from me. Finally, Game Maker. An integrated development tool, Game Maker has been used to create some actual hit games, such as Spelunky. On the surface, the interface for Game Maker looks a bit like Scratch, with straightforward drop-down menus for adding backgrounds and sprites and so on. The difference is that while there are buttons for setting simple rules, you can also add more precise or more complicated rules by entering exact instructions in the Game Maker's scripting language, GML.
I found that Game Maker ran a lot smoother than Scratch, and you can clearly do a lot more with it. You can start by thinking about what kind of games you want to make first, and then learn the code as you go.
Your creations in Game Maker can be exported as standalone programs, so you could give them to your friends. The fancy professional versions of Game Maker cost money, but the basic version is free, and that's all you really need to get started. The built-in tutorial is excellent, and when specific questions occur to you, there are plenty of online guides.
Yes, it's a powerful piece of software, but it's also balanced with ease of use, so I think this is fantastic, Darren. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I shall also give it 9 rubber chickens. Oh, Bajo, we should also mention a computer specially designed for learning how to program, the Raspberry Pi.
Oh yeah, Pi.
In fact, Goose caught up with a Master Pi programmer who is only 9 years old.
Can you make me some pie, Darren?
Negative.
Hi, my name's Julian. I'm a programmer and I program my own games.
Okay, Julian, how did you first get into programming?
Well, I went to the Lego robotics course at the Powerhouse Museum. We were told to build a robot with the instructions we were given, and then we were asked to play around with the blocks of code and see what each one does. That's when I started getting into programming and wanted to do more.
Fantastic. And how long have you been making games with it?
Only about 6 months.
How did you first hear about the Raspberry Pi?
I heard about it from the manager of the Powerhouse. I persuaded my dad to buy one. I looked up on the web how to open up the Pi, and I thought, wow, how could such a small thing carry lots of program?
So what kind of programs do you use to make some of your games?
Well, I use Scratch and Python mainly. Scratch is all graphics and dragging and dropping, whereas Python is typing up.
So Julian, can you show me some of the projects you're working on?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
A game I created is a recreating of Portal 2.
You actually made Portal?
Yeah.
Okay, can you show me how?
Yeah, so when you click, you fire a blue portal, and when you push space, you fire an orange portal.
Oh, wow. So Julian, this is the Raspberry Pi. How have
Yeah.
you made a game using this?
Well, when you start it up on the desktop, there's a software called Idle, and it's all text-based, and you can create all different types of games with it.
So that's a game, all that code.
Yeah, all of this code is Snake.
You wrote this?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. Now,
Yeah.
I've heard you've actually made a good game. Is that true as well?
Yes.
Can you show me that one?
Game.
Oh, wow, look at that. I'm actually on the screen.
Yeah.
And Darren's there as well. So it's Space Invaders with Spawn Point.
Yeah.
So how many points do I need?
20.
20 points?
Yeah, the only way you could do it is by shooting all 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Goose. Oh, I missed him. Fire again. Take that, Hex. Take that, Bajo. Take that. Lasered. I'm just going to hide behind the shield. Ah, I'm running out of lives. This is really hard. Game over. 14.
Game over, 14.
14.
So open up Elix terminal again, and then type in Python in the terminal.
What's it like teaching a workshop on the Raspberry Pi?
Well, it's really interesting because some people don't know how to use it, so I go into more detail about what each piece does. So I tell them how to arrange the blocks of code. The only problem I think will be is some people get really frustrated at it.
So what would so far you say is the best thing that you like most about programming?
It's really open, so there's almost no limit to what you can create.
But what's the thing that you really don't like about it the most?
Well, on softwares like Python, there's a lot of typing up, and on softwares like Scratch, there's a lot of dragging and dropping.
So what are some of your favourite games?
I enjoy my Minecraft, Bean's Quest, Badland. I really like the Mario because it was a 2D platformer game, and that's where I got inspired for a lot of my Scratch games.
Is programming something you'd like to pursue as a career?
Not as a career, maybe just as a hobby.
What would you like to do as a career?
Become a scientist in the fields of either physics or chemistry.
What advice would you have to other spawnlings who want to get into programming as well?
Just get in there, find a software that you want to use, learn how to use it, and then use it. And most important of all, have fun while doing it.
Delete, so many emails.
Okay, Darren, don't blow your bolts. I know you're excited to be here at the Ask Good Game desk, but let's just relax a little bit and get through the questions.
Affirmative, so much knowledge to share.
Yes, well, it's not like you don't barge in here anyway, either on the phone or actually in person running over my feet each week, so it's not that special, is it?
Negative, it's very special. It's my time to shine.
Okay, well, I am glad you're here, Darren, so let's get on with it, shall we? Do you want to do the honours of the first question?
Oh, affirmative. The first question this week will be from Creeper from Endercanto in New South Wales.
Creeper.
Is it true that the Xbox One console that you need to have online at least 24 hours a day? And how is Forza Motorsports 5 going to be like on the Xbox One? Also, what console would you rather have by the details? The Xbox One or the Xbox 360? Ah! Just kidding. Well, Creeper, the upcoming Xbox One does not need to be connected to the internet 24 hours a day. However, it does need to connect to the internet at least once every 24 hours. So if your internet connection drops out for a few hours, then you'll still be able to play your games offline. But if it drops out for more than a day, then you won't be able to play your games at all.
Oh, yes, it is pretty harsh, Darren. One of the main reasons that they're doing this is because you'll actually use the disc to install the game onto your console, and after that, you won't need it. So they need to put these things into place, so you can't just install that disc on a million consoles. But on the upside, and this isn't 100% crystal clear yet, but you will apparently be able to share your games digitally with up to 10 friends, and that's fantastic.
I think that answers the other part of your question, Creeper. If you enjoy sharing games with friends, then you should definitely stick with the 360.
Yes, or maybe keep an eye on the PlayStation 4, which apparently won't have any second-hand or online restrictions from what we can see. But if you don't lend games and have a good internet connection, then the Xbox One is a pretty good choice, and it definitely has some nice features and some good-looking games. And, as requested, here's what Forza 5 looks like.
So many pixels, yet so many restrictions. Well, let's move on to this from Dot in Dotville, Queensland.
Say, Darren, if you disconnect from the internet, what happens? You're always online, aren't you?
Affirmative. In fact, I'm responsible for all internet functions.
Oh, right.
So if I went offline from the internet, then
Yeah.
the internet as we know it would cease to exist.
What happens if you go into a tunnel and you can't get reception?
Well, then the whole world suffers.
Okay, you keep away from tunnels. Because I need to look at cat pictures 24/7. I want that access. Hey, GGSP. You said there was going to be a Plants vs. Zombies 2 in spring this year. If so, do you have any news about it? P.S. Hex rules, Darren is awesome, and Bajo be nice to Hex or else. PPS, Darren should sing Smooth Criminal. PPPS, I haven't watched your show for a while, but I watched the eps I missed on your website, and I'll stay tuned every Saturday. Thanks.
Annie, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Annie? You've been hit by... You've been struck by a smooth criminal.
Not bad, Darren, not bad. Yeah, it only slightly gave me a headache. That's quite enough of that, though, I think. And to answer your question, Dot, it's actually called Plants vs. Zombies 2, It's About Time. And it's set to come out for iOS in just a few weeks, on July 18th, to be precise.
Affirmative. It will be released on iOS devices first, but it will also be coming out for PC and Android later on. It's going to be free to play, and as the name suggests, it will also feature time travel. For example, you can travel back to ancient Egypt and the Wild West.
Well, fingers crossed, it's as fun as the original. I guess we'll have to wait and see, Darren, won't we?
Affirmative. Now, next up we have this from Lachlan in Minecraft World in the Australian Capital Territory. How do you make a house before it becomes night and all of the zombies come out? Because they always come out while I... building my house and kill me.
Well, Lachlan, there's a simple way to stay safe at night. All you need to...
Affirmative. Your first house shouldn't be anything too big or extravagant. If you can't build it in a day, then it's too big. A simple 3x3 block cube with a door and a torch is all you'll need. However, if you do find yourself stuck out in the open with night approaching, then there's one very quick method to get out of trouble. Simply dig a hole 3 blocks deep, then place a block above your head. And there you have it, a temporary safe hole. No monsters can reach you in there.
Yes, admittedly, it's a bit dark and boring in there, but it's safer than staying out in the wild at night. And then you can just knock out the block occasionally to see if the sun has come up.
Excellent. Now, next we have this from Dana in Beverly Hills, New South Wales.
Darren, can we just have a little chat for a moment? Just a little one-on-one. So when you interrupt me when I'm talking, it makes me feel like what you have to say is more important. We've been through this before, but I was talking. Hey, Gigi, I'm a big fan of yours and vid games. Anyway, why did it take so long for the Lego games to have actual voices instead of random grunts? How much recording is needed for an actor/actress to record for a video game? Dana out. Well, Dana, we don't know for sure why they took so long, but our guess would be that they simply enjoyed the simplicity, slapstick, and silliness of just having them grunt. It kept the cutscenes to the point and made for some fantastic humour.
And of course, it almost completely cut down on voice acting and script writing, which would have saved the developers lots of time and money. However, it would seem that this was more of a stylistic decision rather than a budgeting concern. As for how much recording is needed, well, that depends on the game and is usually quite substantial, with many game scripts dwarfing those of movies.
Yeah, it's more complicated than voicing for a film or a TV show. Game characters usually tend to talk as you play and respond to things you do and events that happen in the game. So they often need to record a lot of dialogue to cover every possibility. Every jump, grunt, and fall over, Darren, has to have a sound effect.
Affirmative. Although some games, such as Mario, for example, would only require a few lines, such as woohoo and let's-a go. So it varies greatly from game to game. But let's move on now to this from a mystery viewer in Willetton, Western Australia.
When is the PlayStation 4 coming out, and do you use a PSP or our normal controller, and do you know any games on it? Well, as we said in the news earlier, we have a vague holiday date for the release of the PlayStation 4 at the moment.
But to answer the rest of your question, there is a new normal DualShock controller coming out for the PS4. However, all games will support remote play via the Vita over Wi-Fi. So if you have a Wi-Fi network, then you'll be able to sit anywhere in your house and play your PS4 games directly on your Vita.
Yes, and here are some of the games that are coming out for it.
I think we're out of time for this week. Well, if you'd like to ask me a question, then you can do that here.
Darren, you know it'll be Hex and I next week answering the questions, right?
Oh, that's what you think, Bajo.
You are incorrigible, Darren. All right, earlier in the show we learned how to make some games, but now let's look at what it takes to run a game development studio with game Dev Tycoon.
Your goal is to build your very own game studio from scratch. You start as a lone programmer, making games in your garage near the start of the games industry in the early 1980s. You guide your company through the history of video games and turn it into a thriving, fully-fledged game development studio. It's very reminiscent of the addictive mobile game Game Dev Story.
Yes, it certainly takes a lot of ideas from that. In fact, even the name is quite similar. As a developer, your main goal is to create great games. But before you start, you have to choose a topic, pick a genre, which system you're making it for, and finally, what engine you'd like to develop on. And then you sit back and watch as your little developer pops off bubbles of development.
Affirmative. This game is full of little choices. Each game has multiple stages of development where you decide how much time you devote to various elements. Do you focus on story or gameplay, graphics or audio? Or do you focus on everything evenly?
Yeah, Darren, I found you really had to make a call and focus on what suits the game. Spending your time evenly on everything seems to make for a fairly average game. But if you're making an RPG, then focusing on storyline and dialogue might just be what you need to get those elusive 9s and 10s from the reviewers.
Waiting for those review scores is always tense, and it's a nice victory when you do get high scores. However, while I found that focusing on certain aspects could help, it was almost impossible to know how good my game would be. Sometimes I invested millions of dollars into my game and made what felt like the right choices, only to find it would bomb with low review scores.
Yeah, it often feels like just dumb luck, and the reviewers don't give you much feedback to go on. Would have been great if there was some sort of focus group testing thing that you could do so you could see if your game is on the right track, especially since a few dud games can ruin you early on.
Well, once a game has completed development, you do need to spend time to squash any bugs, and you can earn a few more points of development polish by holding back your game, but it's still impossible to know if it'll turn out okay.
Once you've had a few big hits, it's time to move into an office and grow your studio, which means hiring staff.
When making bigger games, you have to make even more choices, as now you'll need to assign individual developers to each aspect of the game, while making sure you don't give any one of your developers too much work to handle.
So there's quite a lot to think about, which I like, and I also like all the gaming culture references, such as G3, which is obviously E3, and Vonnie, which is obviously Sony.
Affirmative. It's actually almost a complete alternate history of the video games industry, so it can be quite helpful to have a bit of knowledge about big moments in the industry's history. For example, if you're aware of the fate of the failed Dreamcast console, then you'll do well to avoid making any games for it.
And I was honoured to even find a reference to myself and Hex in the game. Overall, though, I did find myself growing a bit tired of this game rather quickly, so I'm giving it 5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Affirmative. I'm giving it 5 as well.
And that sadly brings us to the end of another episode, and Darren, we had a few bumps along the way, but I think we did a pretty good job.
Affirmative. I'm feeling the warm, fuzzy glow of a job well done. Or maybe that's just my laser diodes overheating.
Oh, well, why don't you run a diagnostics check, Darren, and let me tell you about what's happening next week. Hex will be back to bring us all the information, goss, and news from the Electronic Entertainment Expo.
We believe in pushing boundaries.
Well, until then, gamers, Bajo out.
Darren out. Oh, it seems it was my diodes. Stand back. Venting laser exhaust. Venting gas.